all fairly.
So you were wondering what things you were working on since the beginning of their creation.
There it is. There was a Whole Earth Catalogue, Street Fair, and Coyote, which were all sort of major events in 70s San Francisco.
Yeah. And in London, you, maybe not since the beginning, but just list the places that you worked in London.
Well, I left art school and I went to work in an advertising agency, Mason Peacock. I worked there for a year, and then I went learning the ins and outs of working in an advertising agency. I was assistant to Mr. Sargent. He had been at J. Walter Thompson, and so I got news on him, how he was a well-regarded older statesman, and he had moved on from J. Walter Thompson to wherever it was, Mason Peacock. Anyway, after there I became assistant to the art director on Town magazine for 3 issues with Tom Woolsey, which was a learning experience, since he was a very influential German graphic designer.
He was very influential of the style of the lettering in the 60s. And
yes, he was a graphic designer at a time when graphic design wasn't really thought of as a thing.
As being artistic?
What he did with Town magazine was revolutionary in popular magazine design at the time. It's everywhere now, but at that time it really stood out. So working with him, and then from there I went to various other magazines. Witch magazine, which was a magazine that tested automobiles and sewing machines and things like that, and reported on them.
Okay. Where were you working when you went outside to smoke a joint and decided you weren't going to go back?
Davidson, Pearce, and Tuck. I had already smoked by then, but I remember this one day when I was working in the daily slog of working in an advertising agency. I went out into the park and I rolled myself a big fat joint and walked back in and said I was leaving. I was going to go to New York, and so Norman Berry gave me sabbatical, so I'm still on sabbatical from Davidson, Pearce, Berry, and Tuck.
And where did you go work from there?
Well, when I came back, I could have gone back to work at Davidson, Pearce, Berry, and Tuck, but I chose not to, and I hung around, and eventually, after a couple of weeks, I think there was an issue of Oz going to town, so I took up with them and helped put an issue together. I can't remember what was on the cover. I worked on that in the Women's Liberation issue. What the first one was, I'm not so sure.
Oz magazine, the first one you worked on? Is that what you're referring to? You're wondering, were you speaking about trying to remember the first issue of Oz you worked on?
Yes. Well, the first issue of Oz I worked on was number 12 with Barney, and we did it as play issue, which was 2 big sheets of games and quizzes and various things, but it was also all laid out as a big poster. It's pretty good. I've got copies of it.
Okay.
They may be framed, folded up. I think they are.
Folded up, yeah.
160
That's the orange and white one?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take a picture of that. So you worked at Oz Magazine, Curious, Ink, Frendz.
Yes, hey, you got it all down. That's Ink, Frendz.
Frendz with a Z or a DS?
I was very mechanically
Sorry for all the
adept
noise in the
at
background.
being
We
able to
live.
paste up quicker than anybody else could.
What's that?
So I was very physically adept at pasting up and doing it quicker and more clean and neater than anybody else. So there was always work for me no matter where I was, you know. Barney was working at Frendz when I first did some work on Frendz.
Is that Frendz with a Z or DS? Because there's two.
When it was S. Later on, when
Okay.
it was Z, I was art director on it for a short while.
Okay. So then they're both the same magazine. They just
Yes,
changed.
they're both the same
got
magazine. It's just that they changed people. It started off as Rolling Stone London, and then Rolling Stone America hated what they were doing, so told them all to get off, but they continued work as Frendz.
Oh, okay.
With Barney still in place. He had been working on the Rolling Stone version as well as the independent version. I think that's the case.
Meaning he was working on both Rolling Stone and Frendz? What do you mean?
Yeah, to begin with, Frendz with an S was a subsidiary of Rolling Stone magazine in New York, but the vegetables in New York didn't like what Frendz in London was doing, and so tried to close it down, but instead of closing it down, they became not Rolling Stone, but Frendz magazine.
For people wondering, we live on a busy, kind of busy, not very busy, street that people are driving by continuously all the time. So you hear traffic in the background, but we prefer to sit on our porch and do this, so you have to suffer through it.
Here comes the noise now. That's very typical, a suburban vehicle and a garden implement.
Yeah. So am I leaving anything out about where you've worked in the magazines you've worked on and the advertising agencies in London?
Well, there I was working on Frendz, but I was also working on Ink as well, which was a short-lived weekly newspaper.
Ink.
Ink, I-N-K.
Yep.
But they ran out of money and never got into doing. But it was interesting, you know, they were using color in a way that hadn't been used in newspapers before, more colorful.
Was there something called Topic or?
Topic, that was another weekly newspaper. That was at the offices of Town.
Did you work on that or?
Yes, I worked on Topic as a paste-up artist. That's where I left the advertising agency and went to work as a paste-up artist, which is where I learned my skills in paste-up that came in so useful in the underground, that used the same techniques.
Okay. And what's the magazine that they still pass out to this day? When you and I were in London on the streets, they're passing out the magazine.
Was that Frendz?
No,
Oh, Time Out.
Yeah, Time Out.
Time Out started as an underground magazine. It's a broadsheet like that. What's on?
And you worked on that one too, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
They
okay.
were below us at Oz when we started out, when we were doing issue, I don't know, 15 or something of Oz.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 18. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I ran